Hi, my name is Brian Enell, and this is my mobile interface and usability summary for December of 2012. This is a combination of all of the reviews for all of the projects through all of the weeks. So I'm going to start with project number one. As far as what part of the assignment was easiest, it would appear that the easiest part of it was actually getting jQuery integrated into it. Now, I know that wasn't part of the week one assignment, however, I did have experience with jQuery from previous attempts at MIU, and therefore it made it really easy to, instead of design my page in HTML and CSS, to just build those elements with jQuery mobile, which actually worked out really nicely because it also gave me a good base for moving on to later weeks. As far as what part of the assignment was difficult, well, when I started in week one, and in fact I think even still now, I don't have a functioning CRUD. And so it was very hard to think about the implementation of that in my bronze portion. As far as information from previous courses, well, previously I had attended MIU, so I used that information pretty heavily. However, the scalable data infrastructure videos on JavaScript were also really helpful. And if you can call a Lynda series a course, then that was also pretty helpful. As far as an aha moment, I didn't really have them for any of the weeks save for 3 when I was working with forms. As far as implementation goes, I really liked my single call to action. Instead of being a graphic, as it being an interactive item. In fact, I would also argue against it being so large, and I would love to shrink it down. Because I feel like the browse section should be viewable at the same time as the add. So I considered making the add item button just something that pops down on the home screen from the upper border. But I still haven't implemented that, and I think part of it is due to just the forced design. So, moving on to week 2, as far as what parts of the assignment were easiest, because I had already built the program in jQuery mobile, it made it really easy to translate the feature search browse. So as far as week 2, implementing several of the design patterns, mostly lists. Lists worked out really well for me since mine is essentially a list. It's a shopping list application, so lists are kind of its thing. Finding a good way to present those lists, I feel like the drill down worked really, really well, although I could see how maybe an accordion list or something else along those lines would also work. Given the random nature of my list making application, I feel like it would be really difficult to do pictures without implementing some pretty heavy interactive features. So I don't like the idea of a grid layout, and I don't like the idea of pictures and thumbnails. I mean, you could assign pictures, but I really would like the idea of maybe putting pictures into actually be a feature, like have a picture of the item, take a picture of it, and add it to the item that you're adding to the shopping list. That would be great, but it's a little bit beyond the scope of what I was learning in class. It is a feature that I would like to implement later if I happen to pick that skill up in a later class. As far as week 2 went, that was pretty much it. As far as things that were difficult, I didn't really have a lot of difficulty implementing both of the lists. Again, having attended MIU in previous things, or previous times, I was able to use a lot of that knowledge to implement the list pretty easily. In regards to week 3, the addition of the form. Now this one is one that I really liked because I really like forms. And I really like the way that jQuery does forms, or jQuery Mobile does forms, in the very simplified method of submission. Simplified as in code. The output of that simplified submission is actually a little more complex than you would normally get with, say, like a JSON, not serialized array, but JSON, whatever turns it into the big array of items with keys and stuff. I really like the way that jQuery Mobile actually turns all of the items into small objects, an array of objects, so to speak, because I feel like that makes them easier to deal with, in my mind, instead of them being just a string. I really don't like the idea of parsing back in a string, and I realize that may be a little bit necessary for the level of programming that we're doing right now, but I still feel like jQuery Mobile's method for form is a little bit easier. Also, in dealing with the form, I really like their validation, their built-in validation. Um, you know what? I really like the way the jQuery Mobile does forms. There was a small item that I couldn't deal with, something about the button and changing the size or making it interactive to the bottom, but I'm sure that was a failure on my part to fully understand the API available to me in jQuery Mobile for doing such a thing. But again, it's something that I'm going to keep working on. As far as difficulty goes, actually dealing with the objects, again, they're new to me, actually dealing with the objects for the CRUD portion was a little bit difficult. So I still sort of technically don't have a functioning CRUD. It stores, but I have no method to actually pull the information that it stores into a display. So it stores, but it sort of stores invisibly unless you have access to your console and all that additional. I don't think it's very useful. Anyway, as far as doing research and completing, again, the documentation for week 2 and for week 3, the documentation that jQuery provides is probably what I use the most when designing all these things. jQuery mobile site is just absolutely amazing, their documentation. It's really easy to find what you need, access it, and test it out for implementation. I like that their page is their own example. That's my chair breaking. And I found it to be really helpful. It can be a little bit misleading in some parts where the topic that they're covering sort of has little options that you can move around. I'm trying to think of what we were doing. I can't think of it, but while helping other classmates, we ran into a problem where it was just a very fine difference in syntax, which helped. And then we move on to week 4. Now, week 4, obviously most recent in my head, I did not actually do an entirety of streamlined branding. What I really enjoyed in my streamlined branding was my color scheme. I liked that it remained the same color throughout my application, but I really didn't have a strong attachment to the color that I chose. I just, I thought that design fit together. I don't necessarily, I like the idea of having streamlined branding and having an icon and something that defines it, but, quite frankly, it's a shopping list. I feel like it's, like the idea of Post-its, Post-its say like 3M on the back. It's pretty subtle. And everybody sort of knows what Post-its are, but at the same time, like, Post-its are its own branding, essentially. You look at a Post-it, it's made by 3M, hopefully. And if it's some off-brand Post-it, then, even then, they're sort of taking the idea and they use it as symbolism. You see the little sticky note on things. Even the Stickies application, small yellow squares. Again, Post-its. Just amazing. And no branding on them whatsoever. They come in multiple colors, all sorts of things. So I feel like an application icon was sort of... I didn't want it to be branded. I just wanted it to be like something that somebody could open and not feel like they had an advertisement attached to it. It's their own shopping list. Maybe they're using it non-natively, but ideally it would be just a native application, requires no additional data connection, that you can make a shopping list. You can use it as a usable application, not something that I would use for a vehicle for advertising or something else like that, unless I were to build in it truly interactive features, such as adding an item and having that item be searched and saying, hey, you can buy this item here at this store, but did you know it's also cheaper here? Just a suggestion. And at that point, I think we'd want to put more branding into it, because then we're really offering a service. You can offer some convenience to somebody by having an application that stores a list for them for shopping, but that same convenience can be offered by, you know, a pen and paper and a Post-it. So, as far as additional things, I got nothing. So, that was my summary for all 4 weeks of class. As far as my design implementation goes, I really wanted this to be a very simple application. I really like the idea of a drill down menu and adding lists. My search function did not work at all because what I intended to do was to add all of my data to a single page where you can search that list. Because really, I feel like you wouldn't be browsing if you could search. You know, like the two are just, I don't see a connection. I don't see where you'd want to specifically select item by name and then sub-filter your list, or you would want to anyway, the filters and the search, I felt they were sort of if you were a searcher, then you'd want to go straight to search and you want to search everything, which is sort of how the browse is. The browse doesn't necessarily exclude any items. So really the only way to get a filter is to search. And I feel like if you went into the browse sections that you had already done sort of a preliminary search in your head, you said, oh, well, I want to find this item, and how I find that item is I go into the browse where I'm going to sort it by the relevance that I want. Alternately, if you were to select, say, like date added, you don't really care to search the list necessarily, because that search would be accessible from a main search that wouldn't exclude everything. Anyway, I digress, and I feel like search deserved its own little page to sort of exclude it from browse, which I felt were two very, very different things. As far as a CRUD, it's semi-working. The API for adding things back into jQuery is still a little elusive for me, but it's something I'm going to work on over winter break, and I feel like I've got the beginnings of a really good handle on it, and hopefully by the time I make it to ASD, my application will be pretty awesome and have working CRUD through jQuery API or jQuery mobile API. Subtle differences. We'll find out. Lastly, I know my bronze was sort of lackluster in effort. As far as week 3 went, I just chose random patterns to show how they poorly interacted, but again, it's a list application, and any sort of a list is seemingly what you want. I admit that the drill down list I believe is more advantageous, but maybe it makes more sense for other people to see like all of their items in an accordion style list or something else. Maybe that's something that could be adjusted in settings if you really wanted to have all of the convenience added into the application. Lastly is week 4. My off application was actually just uncolored. And I felt like using the jQuery mobile colors as compared to if you just themed it and chose colors, I didn't feel really a strong difference, which speaks to, one, the strength of jQuery mobile's default color schemes and settings for bars and everything else. But again, I feel like it speaks to the simplicity of a list. If you have an application where its primary function is to create a list with user-created content, then I don't think it necessarily needs a lot of branding if that's its only function. Again, if it added more interactive features such as discount something or advertising, maybe you'd want to brand it. But I feel like people are more responsive to applications that don't interfere with their use of the application by branding. And yeah, that's where I was at with that. Although somebody did suggest later that a tiny icon or something might have really helped. So I guess that's it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my really long summary of all of my projects, and thanks for watching. Have a nice night.